मैं ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਆਏ ਹੋ।
It's raining. I guess this will wipe away all the remaining snow. Wonder if it'll snow again this year. I actually did have to get a new pair of shoes because my other one is pretty much worn out. I actually don't replace them as often. I know people would assume, hey, you walk so much. But yeah, although then again, do you think this is excessive usage in terms of when to replace it? You can see it's just completely worn out. There's holes in it. And basically when you're walking, you can start feeling the water getting in. So time to get a new one. All the freezing cold weather probably made it wear out faster. Although with that said, look at that news about what's happening down in Texas in the US. Apparently, I guess the power grid, it doesn't have enough power and it's so cold down there that things are literally like freezing. Look at all these pictures, for example. Like indoors, all these icicles and stuff forming, even people's toilets, for example, it's just freezing up. And yeah, and there's like floodings, pipe bursts, that's crazy. So people without power, basically freezing in the cold and all that. How are people managing? Makes you wonder too in the future if only having electricity is enough during times like this, whether or not you should have all those alternative, I guess, energy sources as well in case one dies. And I guess with that, there was so much different variety of stuff I read today that was really fascinating. I guess the first kind of interesting one was apparently in Australia, they're going to potentially introduce a law where I guess companies such as Google in Australia will have to pay some kind of fee in order to display news feeds. So that could mean, for example, even a user on sites such as a Facebook, if they post links, I don't know, to news or something like that, then the platform would be liable in terms of having to compensate the media source, I guess you could say. And because of that, I guess Facebook did not like it. And on their official site, they're saying they're pulling out of the Australian market in that sense. Like they're banning any links shared for news and stuff like that. So you can say here, for Australian publishers, this means they are restricted from sharing or posting any content on Facebook pages. Admins will still be able to access other features from their Facebook page, including Page Insights and Creator Studio. We will continue to provide access to all other standard Facebook services, including data tools and CrowdTangle. And for international users, it means they can continue to publish news content on Facebook, but links and posts can't be viewed or shared by Australian audiences. That in itself is kind of crazy. It's almost like a big tech company saying to the government, oh yeah, they'll just do this instead. And apparently in doing this, they accidentally banned, I guess, government sites in Australia from posting, I guess, anything. They say it's an accident, but what this created was, it made the government say, okay, here's an example of, I guess, the big tech having too much power and all that. So they're kind of asking everyone, I guess, in the international community to do something about it. This will be really interesting if that'll be a thing this year in terms of social media companies, large businesses in that sense, whether or not they'll get regulated to death. And there was this one that was interesting. It says, Pentagon gives a glimpse of Special Forces secret hand-launched jammer drone. US Special Forces are acquiring small drones equipped with electronic jammers under a program known as Project Hornet. Scant details of the previously unknown project are given in a Pentagon budget document. The R&D budget estimate for the Inter-Service Office of the Secretary of Defense describes Project Hornet as a, quote, advanced hand-launched unmanned aerial system that can be used by forward-deployed personnel to interdict and disrupt adversary electronic capabilities in contested environments. The key phrase here is contested environments. In many theaters of the operations, the US enjoys complete control of the airspace. In this situation, airborne assets such as the EC-130H Compass Call, a Hercules aircraft packed with advanced technology, will provide electronic warfare support, able to detect, intercept, locate, and jam radio signals of all types. In a less accessible place, MQ-9 Reaper drones equipped with electronic warfare pods might be available. So it's kind of interesting to see this type of stuff develop. I know we've all seen those huge drone guns. We've seen dock stations or whatever that detect stuff, but I guess here they'll actually send something up in the air to jam things like a drone. What I wonder about stuff like this is, can you actually narrow it down to, like, say a specific drone, or is it more like some atomic bomb or something like that? Like you drop it, it'll hit everything within its vicinity. And then I read this, which I wasn't too surprised to read this at the same time. It's kind of interesting to see people acknowledge it and what would potentially be done. This one says, Premier Horgan calls for hate crime prosecutions in light of anti-Asian racism in Vancouver. Premier John Horgan wants to see violence against people of color prosecuted as hate crimes, saying he's appalled by a Vancouver police report that shows a 7-fold increase in anti-Asian hate crimes. He says here, quote, "We need to ensure that violence against people of color is not just treated as violence, but in fact hate crimes, which carry much different penalties," Horgan told reporters during a media event in Langford on Thursday morning. He was responding to a year-end report presented by the Vancouver Police Department to the police board Wednesday that shows anti-Asian hate crimes are up 717% over the past year. It's kind of interesting to read the figure. It says the department's figure shows 98 anti-Asian hate crimes were reported in 2020, up from 12 incidents the year before. Wow, imagine that. From 12 to 98. Overall, hate crimes increased 97% from 142 incidents in 2019 to 280 in 2020. But then with that said, they raise the point that I often say too, when you meet someone or bump into someone who seems really aggressive towards you and all that, how do you know they're not just being a jerk, so to speak? How do you know they're a racist? That's kind of hard to tell in many cases. And it says here, Horgan acknowledged that hate crimes can be more difficult to prosecute, partly because Crown prosecutors must prove the person's intent was motivated by hate for the victim. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't follow through and make sure that people understand in British Columbia, if you're going to turn against people because of the color of their skin, you will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And as an example, they use that story that happened a while ago that I talked about, where the person was in a convenience store and he picked up the elderly Asian person and basically just threw him out. I mean, it kind of correlates with all the other stuff that you see too. The more aggressive nature people have towards an Asian person during these times for whatever reason. I don't think necessarily like a law and stuff would fix it. I think it's more about a cultural shift, because unfortunately, like during situations like this, most of the time, just from my experience, you bring it up, people will just say, oh, there's no such thing as racism, or they don't do anything about it, which in my opinion encourages people to continue doing what they do. Actually, a good example, which I've often hear people tell me, like an Asian minority here, where they say it's clearly racism, but other people say no, it's just people being idiots. I've noticed like in parks, many times when you see an Asian walk by, do something, whatever it may be, it could be elderly people, younger people, for some reason, it's more likely they will be approached by, say, a Caucasian who then goes up and lectures them about certain things. And you also wonder, why is that? Why do you feel the need to go up and lecture that person there, but not that person over there? And the only difference you can see is the skin color. So is there an unconscious bias there where a person's saying, oh, I'm more superior than you, so I'm going to down talk you or whatever? Because you notice that happens a lot. Like there, a lot of Asians would tell me that's because of racism. They see you as inferior, so to speak. That's the way it is. Whereas other people say, no, it's just like an idiot. Like there, would you say it's racism or not in that case? Whereas on the flip side, I hope not to see things, for example, where people say, oh, everything is racist, which would be kind of, I guess, counterproductive as well. Kind of reminds me of that story where was that girl that graduated from school and she wore like a Chinese dress. Man, like some people came and say, that's so racist, it's discriminating against us. I'm like, oh my god, are you kidding me, buddy? There's more things to worry about, like these, for example. People getting shoved, elderlies and all that. I mean, focus stuff on that you could clearly see is some kind of, I guess you could say, hate crime in many ways. What, are these birds actually hunting me down now? Alright, looks like there's no flying today. I guess it's time for the archive. Alright, see you guys later.